Greetings, members, one and all of the Salivation Nation. In the first two videos of this series, we talked about the different types of disaster that could occur that would cause what's known as an SHTF type of scenario, where fecal matter hits the fan. And in this video, we're going to talk about the culmination of the different things that we discussed before about protecting yourself with food, water, shelter, and protection, and also discuss ways that the bartering system of these surplus and deficits of these items that we discussed in the prior videos has moved us to form communities, and these communities come together to form essentially a system of local government that is incurred. Because we should always be prepared, we should always be ready in these times, one way or another. And everyone has a role to play as you come together in communities and groups of communities to form your first self-government in a situation that we're in the unlikely event of a natural disaster of a form that would basically shut down society, or an economic disaster as such. Now, I mentioned in the last video that if it's a natural disaster that were to occur, or a man-caused disaster that is not economic in nature, it's very likely that we would see cash being used, because it's very familiar to us in order to purchase goods and services after some sort of a society has been set up of self-government. And essentially, in that situation, well, you're going to be purchasing things that you're going to be needing most every day: soap, water, food, bullets, and more than likely you're going to be using bills such as these, the smaller bills, and change, quarters and dimes and nickels and pennies to make those exchanges. More than likely, you probably won't be using these bigger bills. And this sort of reflects back to what would happen with the case where there was an economic collapse and there's no faith in these bills, because it's no longer fiat currency if there's no government, or a very weak government that has no control of the dollar. And so that would be a dollar collapse type of scenario. And even in a dollar collapse scenario, people still may use these for a time, because it's that which they are familiar. But I believe that in the case of that, you would not use a $100 bill to buy a can of beans. More than likely, that just they wouldn't. Probably more than likely, people wouldn't have the change to do so. It's about fungibility, and this is less fungible, I believe, than these bills, to be able to make the exchange and make change and the like. So, with that being said, let's say that is used and people start to lose faith in it. Well, then you have the historical mode of exchange, the fungible gold and silver. And when I say gold and silver, I'm mainly talking about silver. That's right, because the $100 bill is kind of equivalent to what you see here. Even these small pieces, 1/10 of an ounce of gold here, it's small, it's almost too tiny to be able to carry with you, and too valuable for what you want. You're not going to buy a block of cheese with 1/10 of an ounce of gold, or much of anything that you need to really survive in the moment, realizing their true value. And so, what is needed? Just as is the case with history, with thousands of years, the metal that is the champion of fungibility and exchange, silver indeed. Yes, indeed. Silver is the metal that one will use to protect yourself and as a mode of exchange. And it comes in various different forms, as you see here. And we're going to start eliminating what people are not going to recognize or have a use for in the very beginning. We're going to start with the poured silver. Things like this you can throw out in the immediate aftermath because people aren't familiar with it. Vintage bars that are highly collectible and very nice and desired among the community now, well, most people don't know what those are. In fact, most any kind of bar, you can probably safely set aside, at least at the very beginning, in a situation that we're talking about. People want something that's recognizable. And even in the case of privately issued rounds, throw those out, and even some government-issued coins from other nations, you can pretty much set those aside. They're not going to be as recognized or as valuable in the beginning. But what will be? Recognized constitutional silver, or what's known as spending silver. Things like that are probably going to be the most probably recognized and desired, in my opinion, of the bunch. $50, quarters, dimes. That's going to be the silver that people can relate to, because they're used to seeing it in the real world as clad coinage. Once they recognize the silver content, they can make change, they can apply value to it, and then it will be. But there's one thing that I don't think will be quite as valuable or used, and that is the things like the 40% or 35% war nickels and the like. They're nice, but I think it's might be too confusing with the silver content in these. I believe, if anything, actual nickels themselves, because they're 75% copper, may provide more value or more understandable value than the, even though these are more valuable, the war nickels and the like. But that's sort of open for interpretation, in my opinion. Things like these silver eagles. I believe silver eagles will be a coin that will be quite valuable here in America, and also in your nation, your sovereign silver bullion coin, such as the Canadian Maple Leaf, Mexican Libertad, the Britannia, in Australia, the Perth Mint coins. But I would even dare say that eagles would probably do well in other nations too. But nonetheless, having these recognizable silver pieces in a situation where there is a community and society reforming as a mode of exchange are going to be the centerpiece and the forefront of an SHTF survivability and a way to provide and purchase goods and services in this regard. I believe it's going to be crucial and important to have recognizable silver in that case first, and then in time, as things grow and as ways to be able to verify silver, then things like bars will come into play. It'll first be recognizable bars by known refiners and mints, such as Scottsdale, maybe Geiger, Johnson Matthey, and the like. And then things like exotic pieces such as this, eventually in time, if they're related to a sovereign mint, might be recognized. But I think that's going to take a while. And I'm not saying that gold won't have some role to play for some larger purchases if it's recognized, but I think it's going to be one of those things again where it's going to be the smaller pieces, and they're going to be recognized smaller pieces such as the American Eagle. The larger coins for large purchases, if you're going to buy land in a situation and time where you make an exchange or a house or something like that, then I think these larger gold pieces will come into play and be used. But that's going to be few and far between. It's not going to be everyday purchases by any stretch, by any means. You know, perhaps you can gain access to a well or a hunting reserve so that you can have enough of that so you don't have to eat that. And if you don't have to eat your pet then you're good to go. Then maybe it's worth spending, a gold coin that's over an ounce to buy a hunting area or a spring or what have you in order to survive. So post your thoughts below about this situation, about the types of silver and gold that will be used in a situation once society reforms. I hope you enjoyed this series of videos. I would like to extend a multitude of gratitude to y'all for watching and encourage you to please rate, comment, and always be prepared.